It's me, Gayle from BERNINA of Naperville, and we're going to learn how to do perfect 1/4-inch seams on your BERNINA with a plethora of different feet. We're going to try to sort out for you which foot might work best on your machine. So let's start with what's in my hand. I'm going to put this little pile down here on the table. Let's start with the basic. If you're going to only get one patchwork foot, you might consider the original, the BERNINA number 37 1/4-inch foot. This foot is used on the BERNINA 215, the 325, the 335, the 475, the 435, machines with a 5mm stitch capability. Now, this little guy has gotten a lot of use. This is my original number 37 foot that I've had. They also make this foot for the really old machines like the 1130, the 1230, and even the very old 830 with that red case. So we're going to put this one aside for just a minute. Later, they came out with good old number 57. Now, number 57 looks just like number 37, except it's got this little wall that makes it easier to butt the fabric up to when you're doing long 1/4-inch seams. This one is also for the 5.5mm stitch width capable machines. Let's fast forward into the world that we're now living in, and this is the world of 9mm wide stitch capability, the BERNINA jumbo bobbin, the era of BERNINA dual feed. So we now have a little bit of other options. So first, we have the option of a 37D foot. So this one can be used on your 880 plus, 790 plus, 5 series, 7 series, all the machines that take the BERNINA dual feed. And they also make a 57D version of that. So now we have those. Now, there was some redesigning of the 1/4-inch feet because of the 9mm width and those little narrow feet. So they made the 97 foot, and the 97 foot is a little bit wider on one side and kind of has just a little bit wider design right here, so it feeds on the feed dogs just so. And this foot also has a little tool that comes with it. It's got a seam guide. So I'm going to use this foot on my machine today. Word to all of you out there, there is also a 97D version of this foot. So I'm going to put this foot on. Then I'm going to take the seam guide that comes with the foot. Now, for those of you that might already have a BERNINA 570 that comes with the 97D, you can get this little piece. The seam guide is sold separately. But if you were going to pick up the 97 foot, you would get this in the package. You would also get this in the package with the 97D foot. So I've built a little wall. I have my 1/4-inch foot right there. And now I'm going to stitch. This demo isn't just about using our BERNINA 1/4-inch foot. It's also about reiterating the importance. If you're going to be doing precise piecing, you have to make sure that you start off with everything precise, and that means cutting. So before I start any major project, I do a seam gauge. For those of you that knit and do a knit gauge where you have to knit a certain amount of stitches over a 4-inch square, that's what I think of doing when I'm starting to play with new 1/4-inch feet or a new machine or whatever. So I've cut 1.5-inch strips, and when I sew these 4 1.5-inch strips, they should equal 4.5 inches. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to sew them together in pairs. And another thing about making things nice and even is when you line your material up, they need to be lined up perfectly. We don't want to see the bottom fabric poking up, and we don't want to see the top thread overlapping. We want them to be at exactly flush with each other. Then we're going to lift our presser foot and lower it down onto our fabric. And see these little notches that are in the foot? These are in all of the BERNINA 1/4-inch feet. And this notch is a 1/4 inch behind the needle. This notch is right at the needle. and this notch is 1/4 inch before the needle. We're not going to pay attention too much to any other notch than this one today, but those other notches are there for you for more advanced piecework. Oop. See, got to get back on the road, everybody. There's also marking here on my slide-on table, and if you really want it to be a real fuss budget, you would also try to keep this lined up here with that line. Did you also notice how I'm guiding it through? I'm not pulling, I'm not shoving, I am just nicely steering the material through the machine. Remember what I said about that notch right at the needle? That's the one we're going to use. Making sure you line up your materials. And then finally, I'm going to sew my 2 units that I just made together. So there's the first 2 pieces and the next 2 pieces. Now you might be wanting to guess what I'm making here, and I'm making a rail fence block. Remember, I'm lining that up with that first notch on my foot. Now that I've finished sewing my seams, I'll meet you over at the iron. So we have our piece that we stitched together, and now the best thing that I like to do is to set my seams. I do have to warn you, I'm working with a Laura Star iron, and these irons are all about the steam. And if I'm really using these irons to their full potential, I don't need to do this step, but I'm doing this because I imagine not all of you have a Laura Star. So what I'm doing here is I'm pressing the seams the exact way that they come off of the machine. Okay, now I'm going to clear my pipes. That gets the condensation out. And now I'm going to just let the iron do its work in folding these pieces over. And I can even use the lines on my iron here to straighten out my piece. It's important, very, very important, that when you press, you don't have any gaps in your seam allowances there. You want them to be nice and flat and pressed to the side for durability. Now, I did get that a little bit wiggly, so I'm gonna press that and get it back into position. Now, the next thing is you want to measure. I'm at my little mini cutting mat here by my ironing board, and I'm just checking to make sure that my piece measures exactly 4.5 inches, which it does, and that makes me super happy. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim just a little bit off the edge of my piece, and I'm gonna cut 9 4.5-inch segments from this piece. So I'm using the lines on my ruler to keep everything nice and straight and lining this up right at the 4.5-inch mark, because this is ultimately going to be a rail fence block. And this is a great project to practice with your 1/4 inch seam, because you have lots of seams, lots of manipulation, and I have to tell you, the hardest thing for me is maintaining a 1/4 inch for a long seam, which is how you got the practice with this. So 1/4 inch seams with shorter pieces, like when we put this block together, are so much easier. All right, I'm back at the BERNINA machine, and just for fun, I wanted to show you another foot that we have here. This one is the 37D because I'm using a BERNINA 770 with the dual feed feature, and I'm gonna sew my little rail fence block. So these were created out of my perfect 4.5-inch strips. Then you saw me dissect those into the 4.5-inch pieces, and now basically I'm sewing a 9 patch because I have 3 blocks by 3 blocks. And I like to do this a certain way. I'm really like OCD about this a little bit. So I lay everything out exactly the way I want to stitch, and I do my chain piecing. And of course, chain piecing just isn't possible without my nice freehand system on my BERNINA. So I'm lifting my presser foot and I'm lining things up. Now, when I'm not using that guide, I want you to look really close here. Do you see that little notch right there? I'm gonna get a pin so you can see. It's that notch right there. That's a 1/4 inch. So when I line things up, I like to just pretend I see one little tiny little hoo-hoo of the dip right there. And I want you to go as slowly as you need to make a nice straight stitch. So this is my next pair. Using my freehand system. And also notice how I'm sewing a little bit of distance in between. That's so I can get my scissors in there to trim that easily. Now I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to bring my chain piece down here. It also helps me make sure that I line everything upright, because the last thing I like to do in the entire world is rip stitches out. I also don't like to clean my house. That's probably the other thing I don't like to do. I don't like to go to the grocery store either. It's looking cute. All right, let's go to the iron. Here's my block. It's exactly the way it came off the sewing machine. I haven't even cut my little joining chain pieces there because I don't need to. And I also want to show you, do you notice how it's going floppy-doppy this way, floppy-doppy that way, and floppy-doppy this way? That's how I'm going to press it with the iron. And then ultimately, with my little floppy doppies, and floppy doppy means that the seam is getting pressed to this side and that side, this is going to allow me to snuggle butt my pieces together. And if you haven't heard the term snuggle butt yet, you're going to use it a lot when you're quilting, or at least when you're doing the patchwork piecing. So now we're going to snuggle butt this seam. See how that's folded this way? And this one is folded that way. We're going to snuggle butt those pieces together just like that. And you probably are going to want to pin right here and right here. And I have just the perfect tool that I want to show you for this. I've got my magic pins here. Now, some of the feedback I've received is that these pins come in their little coffin. I don't think of it as a coffin. It's a nice container, but okay, there it is. All right, so I'm doing my snuggle butting, and we already looked at how floppy doppy goes this way and floppy doppy goes that way. So now I'm going to pin with my fork pins, and these are magic pins with the silicone head, and they come in different sizes, but these are the fork kind. So I'm going to pin that one. Then this one goes this way, this one goes this way, and then we're snuggle butting and we're pinning. And then while I'm here, I'm just going to do the same on the other side. Floppy, doppy, and snuggle. Floppy, doppy, and snuggle. All right, let's sew it. I'm back to the machine, and I'm still using my number 37 D-foot. I didn't switch it on you this time. So I'm lining it up to that notch. Remember how I told you that all the Bernina 1/4 inch feet have that notch? Well, this one is no different. And now we're going to stitch. And now, as we stitch, I'm also kind of wiggling and making sure that my seams go in the right direction. But right as I get to my little floppy doppy and snuggle, I'm going to remove my pin. Okay, here it goes again. All right, here comes floppy doppy and snuggle again. See how I didn't stitch over the pin? I'm going to remove it. Line up my pieces nicely and cut. Actually, I like the pinning job I did better on this side, so I can see. Ooh, yeah, right up to the edge there. And then pull. And we'll do our final pressing, and I'll have some closing thoughts. And now we have a perfect block that looks like it will go into some fantastic placemats for me for a 4th of July celebration. In isolation, probably. But I hope that you've enjoyed our social verted introduction to your Bernina 1/4 inch patchworking feet. And I really enjoyed showing you all of the different feet and how they work. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to our BERNINA of Naperville YouTube channel, which is easy. It's youtube.com/BERNINA of Naperville. And if you could, like, comment, and hit the little bell so that you will get alerts when we upload more videos like this. So in the meantime, stay healthy, keep sewing, and we'll catch you on another day soon.